Um, Hello, everyone. Welcome to Animatrix Festival 2021. We have the pleasure of having a conversation about with two wonderful animators and animation directors, Ivana Bosnjak and Thomas Johnson from Croatia and England. They are now in Zagreb, and we're going to talk about their film, which we have in our competition called Imbued Life. And also some other things. So yeah, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having us at your festival.
Okay. Okay. Yes. So yeah, we were kind of like briefly discussing how you started working on Imbued Life. So can you tell me first? It's a wonderful animation. I really like the idea and everything about it really. And can you tell me first how you what inspired you to do this story and how did the project get started?
That's always hard to say how exactly at which point it starts, because we develop films in a way that we drag some ideas for a long time, and somehow these ideas becomes our subconscious, and then when we have to write a script, then we are trying to pull out from the subconscious what was going on before, and we wanted to focus. I mean, we want to focus. Yes, it's also with these stories like our love towards animals and nature. So yeah, we wanted to show that through that film, and to show that there is more than just this physical what we see in the nature and the animals. So, yeah, I believe there is much bigger connection between us and nature and animals.
Yeah, I suppose on a visual respect, a lot of the inspiration was initially stimulated by the idea of the taxidermy object and the absurdity of that in so much as it's almost like an uncanny resemblance of life, and we wanted to play with the idea of what that means, and as Ivana said, delve deeper into an association with nature and the natural world, and a truer meaning that connects us all, I suppose.
Yes, it's wonderful. I really kind of enjoyed it, that it has all these aspects of nature and how animals and humans are kind of connected, or do they understand each other, and also these kind of concepts of mortality and these things, and how people hunt animals and kill animals, and I think there's a lot of these interesting ideas in the film.
Thanks. Yeah, we didn't want to deliberate too much on the idea of like hunting and the death, and I suppose when you're talking with a topic such as taxidermy, which has all of these connotations of like morbid handling of like flesh and actually the gore of the act itself, we really wanted to balance that with something sort of more beautiful and poetic, which is really like the calming introspection of our main character, and the way that she goes about her journey to understand, or to get a closer understanding of what it is that she feels with the animals.
Yeah, and I remember the first time, that's quite interesting. And I remember the first time we talked about it, I think it was in this Krakow festival. And the first thing that came to my mind when I saw the film there in the cinema was that I remember hearing about this belief in the 19th century that I think there were developing this forensics, and forensic science was kind of developing. And then for a very long time in Britain, at least, all the murder investigations, they were doing these experiments that if somebody was murdered, they would try to get the image, the last image that the victim had seen from his, I think, eyes and brain, and kind of like doing this, yeah, a lot of these examinations just to get this done. And the first thing I saw when it came to my mind was this, because of the film that you have, like in like the film roll, which is in the heads of the animals. And I was thinking if this has something to do with that, because that's what they used to do in Britain like over 100 years ago.
Well, we actually shot those abstract images in nature, in natural environments, using an analog camera. But we deliberately like wanted it to not be too literal, like the imagery.
So, yeah, I mean, it didn't come from that idea what you're talking about. But yeah, we wanted these images. They're more like energy rather than a physical image. For us, they don't represent the last image the animal saw. For us, represent more like their energy, more like their feelings, and because at the end we are like connecting the circle of the images with her image, her image, and she's finishing the circle with it. So it's not her visual image, it's her emotion rather than.
Yeah, they're very beautiful images. Yeah, that's what I thought also, that it was this kind of, yeah, I guess it's like perhaps like she's trying to find the same like emotion to reconnect with the nature, which is something that the other guy doesn't understand from, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, it's wonderful. So yeah, and also the other thing which I really loved about the film is the sound. I think that like adds so much to the emotions of the film, and it's done by Andrea Martinioni, who's quite famous. Tell us about working with him, or you know.
Yeah, we were working online. He was in Berlin at that time, and we were actually in England at that time, I think.
Well, briefly in Croatia as well.
Yes. So we were, yes, we gave, our approach was to give him detailed explanation of feelings, what kind of feelings we want in each shot. So we would just talk about feelings, we would write down, and we would really give to him to decide what to do, with some changes at the end. But we like to work with other people that we also give them their creative freedom in a way. So yeah. Yeah, that was our way of working with him.
Yeah, it was a huge honor to work with him. I mean, he's got a great expertise within the field and a huge wealth of experience working on other animated projects. And so neither Ivana or I have particularly strong kind of musical talents, I would say, but we definitely know, or we had an idea of the kind of emotion that we wanted to kind of emphasize with the sound. So yeah, so we had to kind of explain that in the best way as we possibly could. And it would often be describing things such as, okay, maybe like at some moment in the film, we wanted something that was like an imagined sound that the Aurora Borealis would produce, or something like that. It would, okay, we need something that's more, you know, we would often describe them with like images rather than.
Yes, we would. Yeah, that's true.
And that would be the best way, and that seemed to work really well, actually. I think.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I agree. I think because it works so well with it, and it's kind of, it gives this kind of this haunting, you know, maybe like dreamlike parts to the film. And yeah, I know. Yeah, Andrea is good, because I've seen many of other like independent animations that he's done music for, and you know, it just adds so much to it. And yeah, and he has a very good sense that I think he just sees an image and he can sort of like think that what's the best music for it, I suppose.
Yes.
Yeah, and it's also not sort of like overpowering. It just kind of like gives suggests certain emotions, but it's not like too overpowering, like this kind of maybe symphonic music that you see in a lot of films. But yeah, it's great. Yeah, tell us about the set design and the forest, and there are a lot of these elements that's very well made. And how did you make them? How long did it take you to make them? And you know, how big were the sets maybe that you were working on?
Well, our biggest set was the forest set and the lake. They were big as big room we had. We were working in one garage studio, and I think the forest was going from wall to wall, really. So we were, for the forest, we were taking trees, actually fallen branches from the forest, and then we would make a tree out of old branches. And I think we were using also real moss. It's been so long time, actually.
We cut out the leaves from paper. I mean, the problem with using natural materials, of course, is that under like the hot lamps, they can kind of shrivel up over the time that you're animating. So you have to be a bit careful with the materials that you select. Obviously, anything that's green and sort of quite small and slight will just shrivel up in a few hours under the lamps. So we had to kind of, use paper for the leaves. But that seemed to work quite well. Yeah. Although it was very laborious cutting out these little leaves. Actually, we had considerable help with a lot of the sets, thankfully, just to speed up this process. Again, with the taxidermy workshop, there were so many little animals. We had Martina Mestrovic and Kata Gugic also helping to build a lot of those background pieces.
And then Lagdasic for the scenography. He helped us make some of scenography. He's also really great. He's actually an architect, so he understands the space very well. And yeah, it was great help from him too.
But it was our idea to make it as naturalistic as possible. So that's why we chose the branches to make the trees look as real as we could. And we also made a lake with water in because we wanted it to look as much like a real lake as possible. Yeah. And then only after sort of animating on that surface did we notice that you had like sort of specks of dust and things on the surface that would move, especially in the close-up shots where you see the boat sort of dragging.
She's walking.
And when she's walking through the water. And obviously, when you get close, you can notice kind of like the discrepancy in the scale because water will cling to surfaces and to objects in a way which exposes their scale. And we decided in the end to kind of keep a lot of that in.
We didn't want to clean this out. We kind of liked it. It brought something almost disturbing to the shot. So we just kept all of this unexpected.
Like with, the texture of the fur and the hands and all of these like quite close details, it sort of adds some kind of sense of the uncanny to the work where it's not quite, it's realistic, but it's not quite right. And I quite enjoy playing with this in animated films where the audience can kind of be slightly disturbed almost by something that's almost real but isn't.
Yeah, it's true. It looks really, really great. I think that's the thing about it, that I think there's also this really nice like textures and like dust, as you said, and also the water and everything. I think that gives it that kind of like sense of reality. Although you notice that the puppets aren't real, but I guess the textures and materials are so well made that you kind of forget about that. And you kind of like are immersed in a kind of real forest or real lake when you see it. Well, was the dust is actually real? So basically you had like dust floating in the air? Is that how it was?
I think they were just because for the earth we were using real earth, and I think just the particles of earth fall into water. And we entered one shot. I don't know how long it took, like walking shot, maybe a whole day. And during the day, these little pieces of earth move around.
I mean, on the lake shots, on the wider ones, there is a bit of treatment in post-production. So there is some fog that's added afterwards, and also some small ripples in the foreground.
Actually, for that shot, where the animals with the heads, I mean, humans with animal heads in a boat, and then they turn to us. We were actually shooting that outside on a real boat with real people, and we had big masks, but and we were waiting. But there's one city in Croatia which always has fog, but that year decided to not have fog, so that was the first mistake. And so we got the boat on the lake. We got the people who liked this, and actually and we were shooting on real film. Yeah, the quality was really bad. We just had to, all that day, all the preparation was gone. We just didn't use it, and then we decided to, okay, we have to make puppets, and we made that scene with puppets also.
Okay, so that was also shot in the studio with like what the water is real, but the water is real, but it's kind of like a pool that you've made. And...
Yeah, it's taken from that lake, but we really wanted it to have a pixelation with the humans, but it didn't work.
I mean, I think in hindsight, it might have been one additional sort of aesthetic too many, perhaps. So maybe, actually, yeah. I think it was okay the way that it turned out in the end. Because we also had this kind of one shot at the end of pixelation with like the leaves moving in a breeze. So there was some touch of like a real space, like a real physical life-size space. But yeah, I think it might have sort of jumped out too much there in the middle of the film. So I'm really happy that it kind of didn't work in a way. Maybe it would have looked great.
I really wanted that.
I really wanted to use it. The footage was unusable. It would have required so much kind of digital correction that it would have lost everything that it was anyway as a real image on film.
Yeah, it looks. Yeah, and then also the other thing is, I guess the photographs. That is like the photographs are quite interesting, and then you have a lot of these images of like these like maybe red chemicals and different liquids like coming down, and you have these kind of like abstract images also, which are really nice. Did you make them yourself, or was there some like footage or something that you like filmed in, or somebody else filmed maybe? Yeah.
Well, we got actually help on that with our friend Anna Hushman. She's an experimental filmmaker, and she was using this technique on her film, and we saw that we wanted that, but I think she used it in black and white. I'm not sure.
Well, she used it on very figurative images.
Yeah. So it's basically we were just spraying the printed photo image with the bleach, with the bleach, and then we would shoot continuously images to get the animation. While this bleach is working on the surface of the photo, we would shoot. Yeah.
And the incredible thing about this technique is that the way that the photos are printed in like photo studios is that they must do like the colors in layers or something. So basically, this bleach would kind of separate and pull the colors apart. And especially when you're shooting it in the way that we did, like with a camera lock, frame clicking very quickly, you can see all of like the different colors kind of peel and float away. So it was really magical seeing and creating those shots. We made loads of material for that in the end, and just had to select our favorite parts because. It could make a film all by itself, yes. And there wasn't time to have like so much of it. But we also have some instances where there's a sort of a hold frame. We wanted to kind of use it as a transition in moments. So there's, for instance, a shot of the wolf in the forest, and then we took the same still image that we recorded from the animated frame and dissolved that with the same technique. Yeah, it was really fun to make. It was fun to try and utilize all of these different kind of experimental ways of animating, as well as the more traditional puppet techniques.
No, that's true, and it shows. It's quite interesting to watch it because like every time you watch it, you always find like something new that, okay, how did they did this or how did they did that, and it kind of it all comes together quite well because it's kind of, I think it's the way the story progresses is not too self-explanatory. It's kind of vague, and I think that's really nice because you can sort of, because I think you know, I had different conclusions pretty much every time I watched it. That what is this about, which is I think is, you know, really nice quality to it. So I think therefore you know, a lot of people will. Most people will experience it in a slightly different way and have a slightly different interpretation. I think that's really nice, and that's, you know, goes well with all these kind of techniques that you put together.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
You're welcome. The other thing I was, yeah, and then the animals were, I suppose, like, did you use any kind of like real fur? Because also the fur and the sort of the animals, they look quite real. So I'm just thinking like, what kind of materials you were using? And did you actually make like an animal camera, that there is a camera, there's some of it shot through the eye of the animal, or how did you make that?
No, we used fake fur for all of the animals. We had a special way of doing this. So we would build the construction from styrodur, and then we would glue on top like little patches of, so it's by like a big sheet of fake fur. And then we would cut it and glue patch by patch. And sometimes we would also paint it after to put a bit of shade in some parts. It was very important for us to not use real fur, so it would be totally wrong, I think.
Yeah, of course. No, I'm just thinking like if you had found these kind of like old taxidermy, you know, animals which are like really horribly made, and you can just use those. Yeah, put them in a film, but yeah, there's something really interesting about it. Now I was just thinking like they could be like really nice to have like somebody finds an old taxidermy like crow or bird that looks really awful, and you put a camera in there, and then it would just walk around, animate and say, hello, darling," coming like really good. It's like this strange accent kind of, "Hello, darling, how are you doing?" And then he would wink, and he would take a picture. Just for to take a picture every time, you can use that as a camera. But somebody was, yeah.
I think Starowitz, who used to use a lot of taxidermy in his puppet animations, like these really early puppet animations, which I think are all black and white. But it is certainly possible. The problem with utilizing a lot of things like that is that the skin kind of goes quite brittle, and so I think it would require a lot of sort of reinforcement underneath, so that it didn't just kind of fall apart as soon as you start animating it. Actually, it was probably faster for us to use artificial fur and build up.
It's more for.
I mean, yeah.
Yeah. What was the name of the artist you mentioned? I didn't quite get that.
Starevich.
Starevich. Okay. So he used real fur. Yeah. Okay, so of course, yeah. His puppet making skills are like amazing, and he made most of the puppets with his wife. Like they pretty much had like 3 people working on all of those films, which were like up to 75 minutes or something. Yeah, it was like him and his wife and daughter later on. But the daughter.
Oh wow.
Yeah, there was something they made in France, although they were in France, and I think they were quite successful and probably had a lot of money, but they were always working with, as far as I've read, is like always very small crew. It was like they never almost had more than like 5 people working on the film. They would just work for years. Which makes it all more incredible. Not only he was a pioneer, he was also like the most hardworking person ever. Just interesting. Really. Yeah, and actually, because about the foresting, because wasn't it the year before you did Imbued Life, you also worked on this Hedgehog's Home, right? And because some of the forest is somehow similar, or like you're really good at doing this, I think maybe were you also making the forest in that one, and then building puppets for that one as well?
Yeah, well, I mean, it was also shot in the same space. The forest was built in a different way for Hedgehog's Home. The trees were like made with papier-mâché, weren't they? The trunks, and the foliage was made with wool for Hedgehog's Home, but a similar size in the sense of it was massive. We had to build like I don't know 50 or 60 trees or more, actually, maybe closer to 100. Including the small ones in the background. And similarly, we did also make a false perspective, like using smaller trees in the distance for our film and making it look much deeper than it really was.
It's
really no forest in the new film.
No forest.
Well, there kind of is, but not in a physical way, not in the same way.
Okay. Yeah. Maybe you just use matte paintings or paint on glass. Yeah. Right, for that, slightly easier to build actually everything. Okay. Yeah. So yeah, you already mentioned the new film. So yeah, tell us about the new film. Apparently, you're starting on that, and please tell us whatever you can about the new film and how you're kind of advancing on that.
We are now in production. We almost finished the puppets. We are still working on Animatic. At the moment, our editor is looking through it. So yeah, we are planning to shoot in a month, hopefully. It's very ambitious deadline that we gave ourselves, but we'll try to do it then. But yeah, this new film is it's quite abstract, I could say. It has quite a lot of surreal imagery, and yeah, it's not as narrative as Imbued Life or Simulacra. It's going a step away from that, and we really want to experiment with that. We want to experiment with the image and the sound, so there will be some sound in the film, voiceover talking, and that was the biggest challenge for us. Still working on the text. Because we always had like muted. Okay, in previous we had a little. The guy had a few sentences, but mostly no talking. But in this film, we want to actually play with the words and the image. So yeah, it's kind of really big challenge for us because so not not comfortable for us to do it.
And the theme, well, the key theme of the new film is apathy. So. And in a way, that in itself has been a huge challenge because it's been quite hard to it's been a struggle to kind of produce the work because we are in effect kind of putting ourselves through a state of apathy with the topic of the film. So I think, especially at these times, this is kind of like really ground us. To kind of almost a standstill at times, but we're getting close to shooting, so now I feel a bit more positive and energetic about the project, which is nice. But there's loads to do still. There's loads to make.
And I suppose like the pandemic will have an effect on it, on the story, whether you like it or not, I suppose. And I guess that's a good thing also. It kind of can be one of these, in a way, like pandemic stories in a way.
Yeah, I mean, we had the theme of the film before the pandemic hit, but it only kind of heightened everything, I suppose.
Yes. What was it, 2019 when we started?
What, developing the idea?
Developing the idea, yeah. So, and we applied, just pandemic started and then we applied. So with the finished script, we applied for the money. So yeah, I mean, but still, as we always develop the story through production, we try to polish it as much as we can. So I'm sure the pandemic had some impact in a way. Yeah.
Well, but I suppose that's a good thing. You know, it reflects how well. I think people will sympathize with that. I think like way that because people are also understanding when it was produced. So I think it's maybe a good thing to have there. And although it wouldn't be like exactly pandemic themed, but then you can see the influence and sort of people can sort of understand it better in that sense. Do you have any like visuals or puppets or anything you can show us? Or I don't know. I don't know. Yeah. Uh-huh.
Is she going to show up? We might have to change the
I have to maybe put
yeah,
the
might.
Well, this is the girl from Imbued Live.
I'll just put it on.
Yeah, that's true.
There.
So we actually made two copies of her. So this is the one in her sort of like pajamas. Silicone for the skin, and we brush wool to release the individual fibers to make the hair, like to make wigs. Yeah, she's still got the wire still functioning in her mouth. So there's wire inside the skull to allow us to animate the face a little. So there's wire beneath the eyebrows as well, although they don't animate so well. And yeah, we
don't have,
there's nothing so finished on the new film, but there's things in progress.
Yeah, from the Imbued Life, we don't have, this is the only puppet we have here in Zagreb, because we save all of the stuff in my parents' attic.
Yeah, because we don't have enough space. Here. All of the scenography and all of the...
This is similar what we had, so we were, for Imbued Life, for close-up shots, we would use large-scale armatures, large-scale puppets, yes. So we are doing for the next film also, so have this for next film.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like for making close-ups, so it's quite bigger. So you get like a lot of details, and you can put better texture on the surface. Like when she's how do you say, on the deer, when she's going with the hand.
Oh, like yeah, touching the
fur. Touching the fur. So that's like large scale. That deer is like this. It's like half meter big, something like that, to get these real individual hairs to move nicely. And yeah.
You show him as well. This is the torso of the character. Again, it's like a different scale. So we build things in different. So obviously he's considerably larger than the standard scale, and this was just so we could simulate breathing, because we don't normally have an armature inside the chest, and we have one shot in the new film, hopefully. Well, we'll see. It's not finished yet. Where we've got a character and we just want to see his chest like sort of rise and fall gently with the breath. So we've got like screws running through the puppet, and they sort of like push forward, sort of paddles underneath the skin here. I mean, it's probably not even noticeable on the camera. I don't know, because it's so subtle. So there's lots of like little details like that, where it's a piece which is sort of purpose built just for a specific element. I mean, this isn't finished completely yet.
But it's interesting, yeah. I guess in the close-up shots it will show, but yeah, it's interesting technique, yeah, because you animate it frame by frame, so you just twist the screws and that things happen in there. Yeah, it's really like its own art to sort of put it all together and figure out how the movements, how you can show all the movements. But generally, like, that's interesting that you also, like the puppets, you don't change heads or mouths or anything else. Everything is on the same puppet, and then you manipulate it on the same puppet, basically.
We try to do that. I mean, it's all, a lot of the time it comes down to the choice of materials. So we choose to use this silicone, which has a really like skin-like, lifelike quality to it. And as soon as you want to sort of use replacement parts, of course, you would have a seam where there's a join, where one element needs to be taken out and replaced with another one. That would have to be fixed in post-production. So in a way, making the puppets in this way sort of saves some work somewhere else.
Yeah, really don't want to go into that. Like printing, maybe even making 3D images of movement and then printing it. And yeah, it's just not something what we do.
Certainly not for this film, maybe for
yeah, maybe in future.
I mean, like for instance, in Animalisa, this 3D printing technique was utilized really, really well, I thought. So it really depends on the film and the feeling
yes.
that you want to use. I mean, if you wanted to expose that, like in Animalisa, there's a scene where the character sort of takes off, or it's part of his face sort of drops off, and the armature is sort of exposed underneath. Then I think it makes sense. Of course it's utilized in a really imaginative way. But for our films, we kind of want them to be, we want to disguise as much as we can in terms of the mechanism to make people, I suppose, believe or forget about the technique of animation as much as possible.
Yeah, and I suppose those are the kind of techniques that's used in the bigger productions, because then obviously you have to do a lot of like post-production retouching, removing all those seams and everything when you're actually switching mouths and heads and things like that. And then of course, you know, that's useful if you have lots of dialogue and conversations and close-up shots. So then you need to sort of perfect the mouth movements. But then if that's not what you're focusing on, so yeah, it's probably much easier to just manipulate the smaller head and puppet. Yeah, I don't know. Am I right? Yeah, maybe. Yeah.
Definitely. I mean, like for us to build an armature inside the head of a small puppet that can be manipulated to such fine detail is nearly impossible. So we would in fact have to create a larger, like if we wanted a really complex sort of facial movement for our characters, we'll have to build a larger puppet really to allow us to kind of animate it in that way. So particularly for films that require lots of dialogue, it is a more efficient way to produce the puppets, I think.
But yeah, but I think, you know, your films are, you know, perfect the way they are. I'm not sort of like suggesting any changes. I'm just sort of like wondering that what different kinds of like techniques and puppets there are, and which one are good, which ones work best with what kind of story, and whether there's how much dialogue or not. But yeah, I actually really like it. And I suppose because I've been to, I've seen so many good stop motion films from like made in Zagreb. I think, you know, there seems to be like a really good tradition and good sort of teams working on them. And and I guess like did you because there are two normally, there's Bonobo and then there's Agetic Animation. Is it the Bonobo Studios is the one that mostly kind of helps with the stop motion ones, and I think you've maybe done collaborated with them perhaps?
Yes, we made with Bonobo we made our 2 films, but Bonobo also made Hedgehog Home and Story from Beginning of Time from Božidar Trkulja.
Zagreb film also making some stop motion. So I mean, stop motion in Croatia, I think, is relatively quite a new sort of popular technique. Only really in the past 10
years,
10 years or so have there been like so many stop motion films being produced. So there's a number of friends of ours who are working on projects right now in Croatia, and it's a really nice community, and often we'll sort of help each other on other projects and sort of advise others, you know, about certain techniques or materials and things like that, which is really nice. It's nice to be surrounded by other creative types who, you know, involved in similar projects, because you learn a lot that way.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's wonderful to have, because that's the sense that I got, that all of these visits that I've made to Zagreb, there's always somebody doing some like interesting animation in a different space. I think, yeah, Zagreb Film was one of the ones that I visited. There was one in the basement, and there was one in the school. There was one set in the school there up on the hill. I can't remember the name of the place exactly, but they're really nice people who build the sets really nicely. And yeah, one of the ones I saw actually also had this kind of birch forest that had almost no leaves, whatever this white birch. Yeah, and it's really good, the quality I've seen. And then again, people know each other, and as I said, they help each other. So it's really, I have this feeling that it's a really good community, and it's I think it's just kind of like developing and getting better and better every year. That's wonderful to see. It's wonderful. Yeah, that's great. Yeah, but hey, thank you so much for this conversation and everything. I mean, if you have something more to add, please tell us. But it was wonderful talking to you, and thank you for all this information. It's wonderful to hear this, and how these kind of wonderful projects actually happen. Kind of,
Thank you for inviting us for this conversation, and I hope you will all enjoy the festival and the films.
I have to say thank you so much, and I hope the weather improves there, and you can have a nice summer, and this pandemic and everything will fade away as soon as possible. So yeah, we can all get back to the normal life and normal summer, and but definitely good luck with your new project. It sounds great, and hopefully so good luck with that.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.